my assigned topic today, this afternoon, is creating a community of experts. And I'm excited. I'm a little less nervous than I was yesterday, so practice hopefully makes perfect. And I'm excited about the opportunity this afternoon because of many of the very probing and excellent questions that I've heard a number of you put forward. And I've interwoven some of that into some of my comments about creating a community of experts. Recent article in the Atlantic Monthly pointed out the need for an emerging culture for equality where both women and men are encouraged and expected to be well represented in science. The third Gender Summit represented, we believe, a clear commitment that North America stands ready to integrate and leverage the gender dimension for forging new and transformative discoveries and for fostering a diverse and inclusive scientific community. Importantly, also the greater inclusion of biological sex and gender considerations from disciplinary and interdisciplinary frameworks is significant as all nations increase their investments in science and technology. In the States, some of the driving external and internal reports that inform our work include, and I hope many of you will recognize the science and engineering indicators, that this is one of the major national and international sources that includes progress on gender and science. The second report is produced also by the NSF, National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, as is the indicators, and it focuses expressly, it's a statistical digest that captures aggregated and disaggregated data on women, underrepresented persons of color in science, and persons with disability. So the express focus of this digest is on the kind of ethnicity, gender, age differences that we've been referencing, and it's a good source for knowing what's going on in America. And then I would also like to bring your attention to the recently issued report by the congressionally mandated Committee on Equal Opportunities in Science and Engineering. I serve as the executive liaison to that committee, which advises the National Science Foundation, and as I said, every 2 years submits its report to Congress. This latest report has recommended a bold initiative as a way of broadening participation in America's STEM workforce. Again, focusing on women and girls, persons of color, persons with disability in STEM fields. Similar finding that you see here, as is the pattern that has been reported yesterday and in previous summits and such summits within the United States. The bottom line here, what you see is the further up the pyramid you go, the more loss of talent. We all recognize what a severe loss of investment in the production of this talent, but also the time that these individuals, these human beings, have spent investing in education at large, but in particular science and engineering. What I really want to call your attention to are the blue aspects of the pyramid. They capture men of color and women of color. And to that extent, I want to comment on the recurring issue that's been raised in this and previous conferences, and that is the extremely important question of the intersectionality of gender and ethnicity and race. We were very pleased last year at GS4 North America that we had a demonstrably diverse, by design and by intentionality, a very diverse representation of delegates from within the U.S., but importantly, some of our very important co-sponsors were from Mexico, CONACYT in particular, and really informed us in a significant way. Also within the NSF, I had a small innovation fund a few years ago where I would fund some of our program officers to come up with some of their best ideas of how to shape the programs that they were managing at the National Science Foundation. And one group of women, there were 3 from different divisions within the same directorate, came together to sponsor what they call SWOC, the STEM Women of Color Conclave. And annually, they meet this is the 5th year that they've met. They get together, and it consists primarily, though not exclusively, of African American women, Latino women, American Indian, Native Americans, and do some extraordinarily deep intellectual engagement, but they do a lot of nurturing of one another because they tend to be, or we tend to be, so very isolated in the environments in which we work. And so in addition to it being intellectually rich, it is very, very uplifting and nurturing. But they did something very significant about which I'm very proud of their ingenuity. They wanted to establish an infrastructure to address the STEM women of color issues, and they established a society of STEM women of color that's going a few hundred strong now, and I certainly would recommend that to you. And then I would also recommend to you, there was a question asked yesterday, what do we hear from the men in the audience? And I would like to recommend to you what is an NSF-funded activity that's going in a very impressive direction. It's called Opportunities for Underrepresented Scholars. It's an evidence-informed effort that expressly trains and grooms women scientists of color, again, African American, Latina, Native American, and others, for leadership positions in STEM in particular, but certainly within the area of academe. It grooms them for deanships, for vice provostships, and they come together every year on an alumni basis, and the numbers are growing quite robustly and impressively. And I had the good fortune of attending their graduation just a couple of months ago, and to hear these extraordinarily intelligent and highly capable women of color feel safe enough to share war stories, if you will, and to exchange not only the barriers, but the indignities, as well as the uplifting experiences that they had had, and feel safe enough to do that, and form a cohort such that they can continue to reinforce as they go back out into their respective areas. And the head of that effort, called Ours, is Dr. Orlando Taylor, who's with us. I was just so pleased to see him make that trip here to Brussels. I recommend that effort to you. From the literature standpoint, I would very strongly recommend to you an article that Nancy Cantor and Orlando Taylor and other colleagues have written on just this topic of intersectionality of gender, ethnicity, and race. I don't think it's quite out yet, but it's coming out. So by all means, do take a look. It's very eloquently articulating this issue. And finally, Kitty Didion, as some of you know, are in the audience, and she directs a committee of the National Academy of Sciences. And they just put forward a timely report called Seeking Solutions, and it expressly addresses women of color. And I'll say more as we go through. But so to the point of why is it important to build a community of experts? You see the two goals from GS4 and one of the express objectives there. And I would add, rather than simply read these to you again, as you know very well, and as has been discussed over the past 2 days, many of the needs and challenges shape the formation of a community of experts. There is the globalization of science, of business, of environmental, economic, health, food, and transportation challenges that create an opportunity to address national and international needs. The changing landscape of the scientific enterprise calls for new knowledge and new social and institutional practices for improving quality of life by addressing diverse research questions and different research methodologies, again, much of which we heard about yesterday. And collaboration across borders and disciplines creates greater access to knowledge while strengthening public support through broader dissemination and broader participation in solutions to change. Again, as others have mentioned, I was very impressed with Martina's presentation yesterday talking about Discover's markets approach and Nancy Cantor's work that's going on that she has extended to New Jersey from New York, etc. So, insofar as community understanding, what's new to drive the collective sense of purpose that we're all seeking here today? I've got 2 minutes left, so, but we have one speaker who's not with us, so can I take her time a little? I was very good yesterday. I was obedient, yes? Give me 5 minutes, okay, all right. I'm a team player, but I need to, so what's new? So now I just have to go to the slide and read it. I can't delineate it, so you see what's new here. New directions that build on what has been shared at the Gender Summit, new opportunities for deepening the impact of gender science research, new approaches for broadening the participation of women in the research and innovation through the integration of cultural context. The other reason it's important to be timely is because people are just after lunch. There will be no snoring in the room today. I know you all have held up very well. This is something that I spoke about yesterday, and I'm extremely passionate about this, and I will be committed to pursuing this because I think this is a viable frontier-setting course. Excuse me. You can read more about it in the roadmap, particularly the conference report. But in these areas, to my knowledge, and I've spoken with colleagues at the EC, I've spoken with some of our South Korean colleagues, our colleagues in Canada and Mexico. To my knowledge, what we're proposing has not been undertaken yet, but in my mind is a very important natural next step, not even a next step, but it kind of catapults us, I believe, to where we need to be. And that is that gender focus is front and center. It's not marginalized, it's not on the edges, but it's the glue around which all of these activities will revolve. That includes the important knowledge generation and translation that we've been talking about over the past couple of days, the talent development and advancement, through things like in the US, the advanced program, comparable programs in various parts of the world, the transformation of academic institutions and federal agencies in order for gender to be greatly more substantially infused in the scientific enterprise. And this excellence, empowerment, and equality in systems and processes refers to what we've been talking about, the merit/peer review process, who's on the advisory boards, who's on the decision-making boards. And I see this as, in the US, we have what we call eager, exploratory, conceptual kinds of activities. And I think in a non-prescribed way, if we give the PIs in our respective communities an opportunity to brainstorm and come up with what I would see as some potentially transformational activities, this would move us all much further ahead. I was impressed by hearing yesterday the need for standards about how to incorporate. That's a wonderful kind of topic to explore in this multinational context. We would see this initially taking place through virtual hubs to offset the expensiveness of these kinds of activities, but not to rest there. The face-to-face as well as the virtual hubs become quite important. In the interest of time, we have some examples. I won't go into detail to explain that we've supported through NSF STEM frontier gendered research, including both interdisciplinary and international perspectives, and again, this virtual hub approach about which I've spoken. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I won't go through all of this. These are some of the capabilities that we set up for GS3, and many of you are familiar with the advanced program. They have an important activity, advanced implementation mentors network. I would refer you to the website so that you can learn more about this. But this is representative of a scale of activity that we see fitting into a larger gender-focused multinational collaboration. This was the North America online community that was established for GS3. We are continuing and moving forward on that, so stay tuned. You'll learn more about that activity. But what I really want you to stay tuned for, we announced at GS3 in Washington, D.C. last year that the next summit will be held in South Africa, in Cape Town. So start planning now. I believe it's going to be around March, April, or May, and we recognize the expense that's required, but it will be led by the CEO of the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa, but it's continental in its reach and international in its reach as well. But also, and I'm sure all of you have been very impressed by our colleagues, the delegation from Asia Pacific here today. They will speak more about their upcoming summit next year. But already in 2016, Mexico has put in a firm bid and a commitment to host Gender Summit, whatever that number will be, in 2016, led by the CONACYT Foundation. And then we're also shortly going to hear from our dear colleague at INSERC in Canada. That's it. Thank you.